The arena on Velther Station smelled of iron and old fear. It had smelled that way for 300 years, since the Velthari Dominion had first carved the fighting pit into the belly of their largest orbital station and decided that entertainment was best served bloody. The sand on the floor was black. Not naturally. It had simply absorbed enough of what had been spilled there over 3 centuries that the original color no longer mattered. Commander Reth stood at the observation rail above the pit, arms folded behind his back, watching his soldiers drag the prisoner down the entry ramp. She was small. That was the first thing anyone noticed about Emma. She stood at perhaps 1.6 meters, short even by human standards, which were already unimpressive by galactic measurement. She was lean rather than muscular. Her hair was dark, pulled back with the utilitarian efficiency of someone who wore it that way not for appearance, but because it stayed out of her eyes. Her hands were bound behind her with Velthari restraint cord, the kind rated to hold a drink, which meant it could anchor a ground vehicle, and she walked between 2 guards without being dragged, which meant she was choosing to walk cooperatively. Reth found that mildly interesting. Most prisoners, at this stage, had begun either pleading or screaming. The human was doing neither. She was looking at the arena, not at the crowd, 300 Velthari soldiers filling the upper tiers, already growing loud with anticipation. Not at the gates on the far side of the pit where the creature waited. She was looking at the structure, the walls, the drainage channels cut into the sand, the height of the rail above the floor, the spacing of the gate mechanisms. She was studying the arena the way an engineer studies a building she may need to exit unexpectedly. The charges? Reth asked his adjutant without looking away. Espionage, sir. She was found in Sector 12 accessing restricted navigation files. Human military. No rank insignia recovered. The adjutant paused. Her tags were removed during processing. Standard procedure. What did they say? We are attempting to reconstruct them from the imprint on her collarbone, sir. The tags appear to have been worn for some years. The skin impression is detailed. Another pause, longer. We should have a reading shortly. Reth nodded. It didn't matter. Whatever the tags said, she was a human, she was small, she was bound, and she was standing in the pit of Velther Station. Those were the only facts that carried weight here. The crowd roared as the far gate began to rise. Emma heard the gate. She did not look at it immediately. She finished her assessment of the eastern wall. Viable handholds at approximately 4 meters. The drainage lip at 3.2 provided an intermediate step. The crowd rail overhang above would require a dynamic reach, but was achievable, and then she turned to look at what was coming through the gate. The Vorcai emerged slowly, the way things emerge when they have never needed to hurry. It was large. The Vorcai was a predator native to the Velthari homeworld's equatorial continent, and it looked like something that evolution had designed specifically to be a final answer to questions other predators had been asking. It massed perhaps 800 kilograms. Its hide was layered. The outer surface a dense fibrous armor skin. Beneath it muscle arranged in overlapping groups that suggested redundancy, that suggested this creature could take damage and redistribute function and keep moving. It had 6 limbs, the front 4 serving as both locomotion and weapon delivery. Its sensory cluster, what a human would loosely call a face, was protected behind a bony orbital ridge so pronounced it functioned as a visor. It had killed 47 opponents in this arena. The crowd knew this. They were chanting the number. Emma heard the chanting. She did not speak Velthari fluently, but she understood numbers, and 47 was not an ambiguous figure in any language. She looked at the Vorcai. The Vorcai looked at her. For a moment, just a moment, it hesitated. This was unusual enough that 2 soldiers in the front row of the crowd noticed and exchanged a glance. The Vorcai had never hesitated. It was not built for hesitation. Every instinct it carried, refined across millions of years of evolutionary pressure on a world that had never offered its predators the luxury of uncertainty, should have driven it immediately forward. Instead, it stood at the gate threshold and made a low sound in its chest. Emma tilted her head at it. She recognized the sound, not the specific vocalization. She had never encountered a Vorcai before today, but the category of sound. She had grown up on a colony where things considerably larger than the Vorcai had made sounds in that register. She knew what it meant. It meant the creature's instincts were telling it something its experience had not prepared it for. She exhaled slowly through her nose. The restraint cord around her wrists, which was rated to hold a drink, and had been applied by a guard who had not accounted for the fact that Emma had been exhaling and contracting her wrists during the entire walk down the ramp, creating slack that now, on full extension, gave her approximately 2 centimeters of additional movement. Snapped at the weakest stress point when she applied directional force at the precise angle she had been calculating since the 3rd minute of the walk. Her hands came free. She rolled her shoulders once. Then she stood in the black sand and looked at the Vorcai and waited for it to decide what it was going to do. Up at the rail, Reth's adjutant touched his earpiece. "Sir," he said. His voice had changed register in a way that made Reth turn immediately. "We have the tag reading." And the adjutant looked at his commander. Then he looked at the arena. Then he looked back at his commander with the expression of someone who has received information that is actively reorganizing their understanding of the last 10 minutes. "Her classification, sir. The tags, the impression on the collarbone, her military classification." He paused. "It reads Apex Predator." Reth stared at him. "That is not a military rank." "No, sir. It is not a rank. It is a—" The adjutant consulted his datapad, pulling up the Galactic Defense Registry's file on human military classification systems. "It is a designation, specific to their special warfare branch. It indicates an operative who has completed training in what their military calls," he read carefully, because he wanted to be precise, "hostile environment engagement, zero-resource survival, direct action in contested biological territory, and adaptive close combat against non-standard threats." He looked up. The literal translation of the designation is Apex Predator. Reth turned back to the arena. Below, the Vorcai had finally committed to its charge. 800 kilograms of armored muscle crossed the arena floor at a speed that had always, in 47 previous engagements, been the end of the conversation. Emma was not where she had been. She moved laterally, not away, across, and the crowd noise shifted in pitch, confused, because every creature they had ever put in this arena had moved away from the Vorcai, and away was what the Vorcai was built to pursue and close. Lateral was different. Lateral meant the geometry of the charge was suddenly wrong, and the Vorcai had to adjust. An adjustment took a fraction of a second, and in that fraction of a second Emma completed her angle and reached the eastern wall. The drainage lip was exactly where she had measured it. She hit the wall at a run, used the lip as an intermediate step exactly as she had planned, reached the handholds at 4 meters, and was moving upward before the Vorcai had fully recalculated. The crowd had gone quiet. Not the quiet of boredom. The specific quiet of 300 beings simultaneously processing something that didn't fit their model of the situation. Emma reached the rail and cleared it in a single motion and landed on the observation walkway 6 feet from Commander Reth. She straightened, pulled a fragment of restraint cord from her wrist, dropped it on the floor, and looked at him with the unhurried attention of someone who has finished one task and is assessing the next one. Reth had not survived 20 years of Velthri military command by being slow to read situations. He read this one immediately and completely. He took one step back. He had never, in 20 years, taken a step back from anything. "The navigation files," Emma said. Her Velthri was accented but precise. "The ones I was accessing in Sector 12. I need them." She paused. "I'm also going to need a ship." Silence on the observation deck. Reth looked at her. He looked at the arena below, where the Vorcai was making the low chest sound again, standing in the center of the pit, looking up at the rail where its opponent had gone. 47 previous opponents. Not one of them had left the arena by going up. He looked back at Emma. "The tags," he said. "Apex Predator. What does it require to earn that designation?" Emma considered the question with the same focused assessment she had given the arena walls. "You have to survive things," she said, "that weren't designed to be survivable. Enough times that your commanding officers stop being surprised when you do." Reth held her gaze for a long moment. Then he turned to his adjutant. "Get her the navigation files," he said, "and have a courier vessel prepped at Base 7. The adjutant stared. "Sir, she is a prisoner. The charges." "The charges," Reth said with the flat certainty of a man updating his understanding in real time, "were filed before we knew what she was." He looked back at Emma. "We do not have a cell rated for Apex Predator. I checked the registry." He paused. "We also do not, it turns out, have an arena rated for one. Below, in the pit, The Vorcai laid down in the black sand, not in defeat, in the specific posture that predators adopt when they have assessed another predator and decided that this particular hill was not the one they intended to die on. Emma watched it for a moment. Then she looked back at Wrath, and the corner of her mouth moved in something that was almost, but not quite, a smile. "The ship," she said. "Bay 7. Bay 7, Wrath confirmed. He stepped aside to let her pass. He did not fully exhale until she was gone.